Welcome back to Sunrise Daily. Well, yes, indeed, we are keeping our focus on the rescheduled Edo governorship elections. Yeah, we do know they're still talking about it, politicians. But yes, we'll be getting a response from INEC today about it. But in the meantime, let's take you back a little bit and see how it all happened at the time. Take a look. All right, we'll get that to you maybe much later. But now we're joined by Mr. Solomon Soyebi, who is the INEC National Commissioner in charge of voter education and publicity. Thank you for coming on this morning.
Thank you very much.
Well, in several of those reports, we had heard the police speak. So when the police spoke, INEC also spoke at that time initially that they were going on with the elections. And so they eventually had the meeting and then had to announce the rescheduling. But I've had people who have said, from the look of things, given those response that they saw and read, it does appear as though INEC was forced to shift these elections. Is that the case?
Well, I wouldn't use the word force. As you rightly observed, we made an initial statement that we were going ahead with the election. That was at a point when we finished, we were having the stakeholders meeting in Benin with the political parties, the 19 candidates contesting the Edo gubernatorial elections. The DIG of operations was there when news filtered in. In fact, it came in as a rumor, nobody believed it, that there was a press release in Abuja that there was an advice by the security agents, not specifically the police and DSS, because we must exclude the military here. The police and the DSS, they had a joint conference advising the commission to postpone the elections based on intelligence reports that there were bound to be attacks in some parts of the country during the election a Salah period, and the Edo state was specifically mentioned.
Pardon me, but when you say they had a joint conference advising INEC, did they write INEC officially, notifying INEC?
I'll build up to that. We had it just like every other. In fact, they had before us because it came in as a rumor, as text messages to the commission while we were having the meeting. So we didn't believe our ears. And that day, we told the whole world that, look, we are hearing it the way you are hearing it. And the second day, we waited for official communication to be made till about 12 noon. It didn't come forth. So we had to go ahead and come out very openly to the whole world that we don't have any platform to postpone this election. We are going ahead with this election. As far as we are concerned, these elections will hold on the 10th, which was just about 48 hours away from the time we issued the release. Eventually, by 6 p.m. that day, which was well over 26 hours after the press conference was released, we got an official communication, separate communications from the DSS and then the IGP, advising us that we should postpone this election. Luckily, by that time, the chairman had called in the commissioners, and we could form a quorum and come up with a decision. So we looked at the implications, and we discovered that we had no choice. There was no other choice apart from relying on security advice to postpone the election. So that was why the release came very late at night that we were postponing the election. We waited for the communication to come in. Once it did, we held the meeting and then we came up with that decision that we are going to postpone the election.
What if the communication didn't come in by 6 p.m.? If it came in at about 9, would you have probably gone ahead?
We were still going ahead with our preparations. We were going ahead with that because there was no way we could rely on just a newspaper or a press release to. It's not an instrument you can use to postpone an election. It must be properly documented. And we asked them if that is the case, that was behind the scene communication. If that was the case, make it formal and write us so at least we have something to rely upon to. postpone this election.
We'll be back in a moment and continue our conversation with Mr. Soyebi. Join us again. Well, let's continue our conversation on this particular matter. But when you have meetings, the stakeholders meeting, it usually involves the police, the political parties, and several other groups. But the one that the police held, was it that there was no representative from INEC in that meeting?
Not only was there no representative, there was no consultation either. Because we felt that we should have been consulted, at least hinted about the possible postponement. I would have weighed all the options, because as we said that day, preparations for a dual governorship election had gone well over 90%. There are 14 timeline activities. 12 of them had been concluded. What remained for a dual gubernatorial election to conclude was just one, last day for campaign, and the last one, the balloting. Those are the only activities left on the timelines. We were not consulted, but at the stakeholders meeting which we had in Benin, both the DSS and the police were fully represented by the DIG and then the high director from the office of the DSS.
Did they give you any hints that the elections were going to be postponed at the time?
There was no indication in any form. Because if we could look back and look at what they were saying, in fact, they were even reeling out their levels of preparation for the election itself. They were talking about the levels of, they reeled out all the things they have done, mobilization, men, materials, and then warnings. Yeah. Even at that stakeholder meeting, about 72 hours to the election in Benin.
Because they said they had deployed 25,000 policemen for this event.
That was what they said at the stakeholders meeting in Benin.
Does that mean that you had policemen who were with INEC officials or ad hoc staff and members of staff who were ready, standing by for the deployment of materials?
What we had from them, was there would be policemen at strategic places, all the polling booths, about 4,000 of them in voting points, about 4,000 of them in Benin. They will be strategically deployed. In our offices, we had security, but the moment we had that particular advice, as they called it, we just discovered that there was a decrease in security activities in the state.
You know, you are also an information expert. If you weren't here seated telling us this, I don't think Nigerians would have believed that INEC wasn't part of this whole information before you finally shifted that election. Now, when finally they got to you as the electoral umpire, were they able, or how did they convince you, so to speak? What was it that you were told or you saw that made you believe that truly it was to be postponed?
The advice they issued itself was enough. The spoiler. Some parents had even started asking their children not to come home. Don't forget that when we talk about elections, there are two major components: the conduct of the election and the environment in which it's conducted. The environment had been poisoned a little bit with that uncertainty. The police said INEC should, or advised INEC not to go on. INEC said they were going on. There was a sort of pollution in the environment. But when they advised us, there was no way we continue. I told you we had no choice at all, because if the person who is supposed to protect the environment for you says the environment, there is no guarantee of safety in the environment, there was no sense in going ahead.
What about physical security, those things you could see? Because first the Commissioner of Police was changed before that election. Another one came on board, and as Chamberlain reminded us, the IG did say he had many thousands of men and women officers to Edo State. Did you feel the presence?
The build-up was fantastic, because we even had the excess meeting. the Inter-Consultative Committee on Election Security in Abuja, where we had representatives of every security apparatus, the Army, Navy, Air Force. In fact, they even insisted they were going to use helicopters and everything. The build-up was very good. At the stakeholders meeting between two, there was a replicate. We had the representative of the IGD, the representative of the DSS, and other military personnel. But as I said, when the announcement came, everything turned. There is one thing I can assure you, the security apparatus in Nigeria will not share security information from you, because we tried as much as possible to really get to them and say, okay, tell us exactly what these security implications are. And we were made to realize that they don't share security information with non-security personnel. We had to rely on that.
Non-security personnel, meaning that will be INEC?
Yes. So we have to rely on that advice and then make sure that the security of our personnel, materials, and then the whole process becomes our priority. There is no way we could go on in an environment where you have been told would be violent. We wouldn't go on and risk the whole process itself.
Let's get Markwell in with a question. Markwell.